Getting older can sometimes suck, and getting older in the age of social media definitely sucks. If you're tired of people telling you to age gracefully, then you're in the right place. This is all about living your best life at any age. First rule, don't call me ma'am. Hey everyone, I'm Jodi Miller, and welcome to Don't Call Me Ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. And don't call my next guest ma'am either, okay? Because we're not. I've known this woman for,
20 years for sure.
20 years, definitely 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, but with social media, it feels like we just hung out last week.
Yep.
She never ages. She is
Likewise.
a meeting. She is a television host. She is an influencer. And guys, she is the first comedic mom vlogger. The first.
Yes.
She was first. She
Forbes
was
and
named.
Nielsen said it, so it means something.
So that means it's true. Start clapping right now, and that means pull over to the side of the road if you're driving for Daphne Brogdon. Woo!
Thank you so much, Joy. And you know, it's so funny. I have to tell you, I actually tell my son's friends they should call me ma'am because a couple of them call me miss, and it makes me crazy.
Does it? Oh my God, I would love it if somebody called me miss. Why does that make you
Because
crazy?
I'm trying to teach them manners, but because to me it's like when the waiter goes up to the old ladies and goes, "Oh, what do you girls want?" Like they're
you think
well
it's, like,
aware.
condescending? Yeah.
Yes,
I definitely
they're
had
well
that.
aware.
It happens
Yeah.
now with birthdays when I go into a bar and they're like, oh, let me see that ID. Whoa, barely 20. I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like, it's
Yeah.
clear that I'm
Yeah.
not 21, but I'm also not 110.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just don't be a dick.
Agreed.
I just think the word miss is just a prettier word than ma'am, and we are miss. We're just missing.
Well, I usually say you can say Mrs. Peel, you can say Daphne, but yeah.
Call you Daphne.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, 20 years. Neither one of your kids were born.
Well, I was trying to remember. So and I could be wrong. My memory of, so I was doing stand-up.
Yes.
I did improv stand-up, all that stuff, early zeros. My memory was I got married, I had my baby, took a class in sketch comedy at Acme, realized I'm terrible at doing sketch comedy.
I thought
And
that too.
I said...
Just kidding.
I said to the teacher, listen, this isn't my bag. I need to get back to stand-up, but I really need to polish the stone. And he said, I got the gal. You could take some class. Wasn't that?
Yes, you definitely took my class, but I
Yes.
don't know if I remember that you had a
I
baby.
think I had a 1-year-old. I think. But I'm not sure. No,
probably
not
did.
even a 1-year-old. She was 6 weeks.
Oh my God, now it actually comes back to me. I
was
actually do
roadkill.
remember that because, yes, you were. And now that I know exactly what 6 weeks feels like, but back then I was like young and dumb and just like,
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
I almost said what people say, young, dumb, and full of cum.
Oh, well.
Anyway, I probably was.
Probably not that.
I
Yeah,
probably was
yeah,
back then.
good,
But
good.
not anymore, guys.
Yeah.
Because I'm a mom.
Yeah. But moms can have a
They
sexual
totally
life,
do. But
too.
I remember going to your house too, probably for a coaching, and thinking, I want this life. And then we followed each other.
Yep.
You were definitely you were a mom vlogger, which was, nobody was doing that. And nobody was talking about it. And I'm sure you talked about it in your stand-up, and I know other stand-ups talk about it, but now that I'm a mom and I talk about it, I mean, you really definitely were a trailblazer in that vlogging. Like, what even made you decide to do that?
Well, it's funny because it really was stand-up that got me there. Because what happened was I was in the back of the Comedy Store. My daughter's about a year and a half, and you're in this crappy room in the back waiting for your few minutes. Because when I was hosting before I was married, my shows for Discovery and so forth, I could get good sets in Seattle and Boston and Austin. But you know how it is when you're back in LA, you're like, can I do the 5-minute bringer? So I'm in the back and I thought, what am I doing here? I have the gift from God at home. And I thought if there was just a way, and I would go online, and all the sites for mom at that time were 10 best diapers. And I was like, no, I want to connect with moms about the emotional and the sarcasm and all of that. So I am a person who really has always taken no for an answer. But this was one of the few times in my life I kept networking. I go, I have this idea, funny videos for mom. I say that to my kids now, and they're like, yeah, that's called our neighbor. Everybody does that now. But in 2007, nobody was doing that. So anyway, I networked to a company called Deca, and they were doing gaming stuff. And I said, listen, you're missing the boat. Moms make the money decisions. You need to do these videos. And I pressed them, and finally they said, you know what? You're right. they went to Target and said, we want to do this video with Daphne Brogdon. And Target said, we know her, but we want more voices. So we ended up, it's long story short story long, came up with 2 ideas. One was Cool Mom, which was mine, my personal stories. And then one called Momversation, where we brought in other prominent mom bloggers. They hadn't been on video, they were bloggers, and there would be a subject that they would talk about. And what's so hilarious to explain now is we didn't have Skype, we didn't have Zoom. So they would send me a little camera where I'd be like, they'd be like, okay, so Rebecca just did this, and I'd have to watch it and go, oh, okay, what do you do at pickup line? Okay. And then start camera. Oh, Rebecca, I know exactly what you mean. And we would pretend to be, and then I'd send it in the mail, and and then they'd edit it together to make it look like we were talking live. Anyway, over 3 million. We went on Oprah. It was a whole big thing. And then YouTube, after a few, we were doing very well. And then YouTube came along, and the monetization went through the seller.
Right. What's crazy is that if you did it now, it would probably still be a huge hit. Just taking Cool Mom, mom, and having other mom influencers, you know what I mean, around the table with their takes. Because I'll tell you right now, I mean, it's a market that the well will never run dry.
I think you're right.
Just like the kids on YouTube that are making billions of dollars that my daughter watches all the time. But when I started, it was right during the pandemic, when we were coming out of the pandemic, and my daughter was, 3 months, 4 months, when rooms started opening up again.
Yeah.
I remember the first time, and I was so in a trauma state, as you are when you have your first child, and you are like, what is happening?
I give you so much props for doing it on your own. I just think you're so brave.
Oh my God, thank you.
So brave. And at the time, I'll tell you, I was like, I'm going to push in there and I'm going to help Jodi. And then my husband dropped dead.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm not going to go and help Jodi.
I remember you reaching out saying something, but yes, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. My husband dropped. I mean, how rude of him. I mean,
such bad timing.
He didn't even think of me.
I know he didn't.
But I remember getting on stage. It actually worked really well. Looking back, I was probably very frightening to a lot of people, but I remember being on stage and I was like, 0 to 4 months is awful. Why does everybody say, oh my God, you're going to love the newborn stage, you're going to miss it? It sucked. It was so bad.
It's really hard.
I remember 1 month in, rocking in my bathroom at like 2 a.m, rocking back and forth thinking, I'm going to have to give her back. I'm going to have to return the gifts. Why did I do that? And then I found out that everyone has that thought.
I was in bed. She would not shut up. She was colicky. And I've made a terrible mistake.
Yes.
I've made a terrible mistake.
More people would talk about it because there's so much guilt and so much shame behind that no one talks about it. I remember I texted my friend who's an actor and a comic in New York, and his daughter is 3 months older than my daughter, and he's around the same age as me. And I remember after that night, though, I texted him and I said, I just screamed in my daughter's face, shut the fuck up.
Me too.
In her bassinet. And he goes, oh yeah, I've done it all the time.
Yeah.
I go, I felt so bad. I thought I was the only mom to do that. Like I remember having a screaming match with her. So like a 4-month-old. But I was like, people are talking about parenting, but they weren't talking about like, it's really hard. It's all
really
of that
hard.
stuff. And on social media, all you see is like, look at my daughter, look how cute we are, look at everything she's doing.
Well, and then at the age, my kids are teenagers. Now I see the moms who post on Facebook, oh, so-and-so just graduated from this and is going to that school. And I'm thinking, oh, good luck paying for that.
Yeah, seriously, all of that stuff. But it's just about, it's like, the show. But, let's transition into our lives on social media.
Yes.
I remember specifically, and I remember wanting to see you just because a death in the family is devastating. When my mom passed away 12 years ago, it rocked my world so hard. It's still to this day, you know what I mean?
And my mom died 2 weeks ago yesterday.
2 weeks ago, and my brother died a month ago. Guys,
oh
this is so uplifting. Get ready for some comedy.
Yes.
Yes. No, I mean,
laughter through the tears.
Honestly, that is true, though. I haven't talked about my brother dying because it just happened, but I do talk about my mom, on stage. It is incredibly therapeutic. But having said that, when she died, it was for a long time rocked my world. And when I saw that your husband, I can't even imagine it. Because I chose to be a single mom.
Yeah.
You became a single mom over night.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So it was during the pandemic, which was not a great time. Our kids were 12 and 15, and the lockdown was really hard, particularly on our 15-year-old.
Yeah, God.
And he just was having a lot of back problems, and he kept going in, and it was hard to get access medical care at that time.
Right.
And they would say, have some pills, go. And, he was a chef, Mark Peely, he'd worked in restaurants for years. So we kind of thought, okay, well, his back always hurt. And I'm going, I told you to do yoga. Medical advice, don't get it from me. Yeah. And then it was the end of your little gathering in the backyard, and he called and he said, they said I have stage 4 liver cancer. And I was just, what? And he was gone in 9 days. And so it just was, we never even were sure what cancer it was because it went so fast. They couldn't.
That's very similar to my brother.
Oh, really?
Well, my brother had esophageal cancer, and that is a cancer that you don't know until it hits every organ.
Yeah.
So my brother was like living his life. I mean, he was in a level of discomfort anyway because after his stroke, he definitely had some pain still, and he wasn't as active as he should have been. So I was talking to him, he had neck pain, and then all of a sudden he was like, he told me he thought he had food poisoning because his stomach was really bothering him, and it was like almost a week, and it was getting slightly better, but I was like, go to the doctor. And he was like, just a lot of excuses. And then it was, Easter, and I'd called him a couple days before. He calls me back, leaves a message. I listened to the message, and he was like out of breath, which was different. And I said, if you don't go to the hospital right now, I'm sending an Uber. It was a Sunday.
Yeah.
Because I knew urgent care wasn't open. He went, he said they did a scan. He was going to spend the night. They just took an x-ray. I'm sitting here trying to convince myself, because my dad was like, it's probably COVID. I'm like, you're right. That makes sense. COVID or pneumonia. That makes sense, right?
That so many things. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, yeah, that's what it's going to be. They're going to give him antibiotics. But there was a part of my body that felt the exact same way when my mom went into the hospital. And died a month later. I knew something was really wrong.
I agree.
And when he called me and said they found a mass in his esophagus, they were going to do an endoscopy, and the doctor called me and was like, well, there's 2 lesions in his lungs. There's a 12-inch mass, which for those of you, it's a foot. It's down his entire esophagus.
Yeah.
And he was gone a week to the day that he went in. It had spread to every organ.
And I hate to say it because people said it to me, but it's true. Thank God he didn't suffer.
Yes. No. And I'm saying that to you too. Yes. They don't, you know what I mean? It is.
Because my husband right away was like, I don't want heroic measures. I don't want to be picked apart. I don't.
I mean, I'm not even sure my brother knew because I had him on some morphine and stuff like that. Yeah. His attitude about it, even when we were like waiting to hear for the biopsies, was very matter of fact. It was very much like, yeah, they think it's cancer. So, and then of course I'm like the super positive, like, okay, well, we don't know until we know. When the oncology team comes in, then we'll talk to them and we'll figure out a plan. I'm sure you would like that. I mean, like, so he went in and they just did a biopsy, or they just saw a mass, or what did they? I mean,
they did an MRI, right? And that's how they saw it. Finally, it was really hard to get an MRI.
Were they even like talking about?
We have to find where they had to, with cancer, you have to find where it starts in order to treat it.
Yes.
And they went in and they found that there were cells from other parts of his body in the liver.
Okay, so
it went from somewhere else, but at that point they said it's breaking down his body so fast, we can't even. There was no point to chemo or radiation. Everything was just.
Yeah, it was just. They mentioned palliative care. They even said to him, possibly he could have under a year. So he kind of hung under that, but he still wasn't like really processing it. And then it was, it was.
Well, it's like with my mom. I was just preparing to bring her home. She had a fall. But she'd been, winding down, but it was okay. And then there was, well, you should bring her home. Okay, how long do you think she? Oh, probably 6 months. Nothing acute. 48 hours later, she was gone. So, I mean, it's, and then also I think, especially for somebody at her age, maybe that she just was like, you know what, if I'm going to be confined to a bed, I'm out.
I'm totally out. I mean, so with Mark, I mean.
So you were saying about getting back to, single mom, yes. So as I remember looking him in the hospital bed and thinking, how the F am I going to do this? How am I going to have 2 kids in just logistically, 2 different schools and
Yes.
How am I going to do this? And I had to so there was the severe, obviously emotional, and as a mother, being a widow, you don't just grieve for yourself, you're also grieving for your children and all that they're going to miss and all the things like, oh, now it's prom night and Mark doesn't get
I
to see
remember
his
you
daughter
posting
in
this,
prom.
and I was like sobbing.
Yeah. And then, but what I did is I just had to be like, okay, what can I do? There's a sweet, like, kind of, you know, out of work actor, Uber driver, neighbor friend of mine who I knew his car had just broken down. So I said, listen, I will give you Mark's car for the year. What I need in exchange is you help me get my kids to their doctors and therapy appointments and some of the honeydews. Because that was the other thing. I was like, Mark always changed the electrical that went out. I don't know how to do this.
Right.
One time this is what I would say to widows: ask for help.
Right.
Ask for help. I'm standing on, maybe as a regular single parent, you do that anyway. I'm standing on the porch, just, I don't know what hit me. I was just sobbing, and my neighbor Maureen came by and she's like, what? And I go, the dog food bags are 50 pounds. I can't lift them. I don't even know what to do. And she was like this, I'm going to go get the dog food right now. And she and her husband spent the next several months buying me dog food just because there were these little, you know, so it's like all these little things and then all these big things.
I think you said it. You need to ask for help, you know, whether you're grieving, whether you're just a single mom. I think people, for me, in my case, people just assume because I'm, you know, independent, strong-willed, all of that I don't need to help. My daughter has definitely she's forced me to ask for help.
Yes.
So, which is
also,
great. People want to help, by the way.
Not only that, my philosophy with kids is that I think it really makes them stronger to know that there is a community of other adults in the world to support them. So my husband was married before and he had older kids, and one of the reasons I thought that his kids were more resilient through their parents' divorce was because they did have a very much an open door house. So they had lots of adult friends that were always like helping mentor. I got my son into the Big Brother program, which was huge. And they said, oh, good luck. You know, there's a waiting list. And it was one of these divine moments. We got a guy who was great, who showed up every 2 weeks.
Oh, that's so great.
He's gonna go camping with him next week, even though he's officially out of the program.
Right.
You know.
I mean, no, that's so great. And you're right. It's like, even with my brother, you know, it's been a month and I have to find time to grieve. I have to find time to mourn because my daughter doesn't give a fuck if I'm sad. You know what I mean? She doesn't understand at 4. But even your kids that were older, it's hard to fall apart. Of course, they want to see that you're, you know, obviously you miss their father, but you have to remain strong for them to know that we're going to get through this. You know.
Well, that's why it would be quite calculated. Like when they went to school, then I would crawl back into bed for an hour and cry. You know, and that's...
How were they, I mean, like, so this happened during the pandemic, so you guys were just together, they didn't even have the distraction.
Well, it was right at the end. It was the last day of lockdown learning.
Oh, okay.
And so we were like, I remember saying, well, I said, let's take a trip, you know, so we did that. I had been working, I had to stop working because my work involved travel, and that was not going to work anymore. So, you know, the other thing is that they both grieved so differently. Mm-hmm. So that was an adjustment. My son and I were more weepy aligned, and but I had a feeling he needs physical outlet. So I got him into Muay Thai, which he's still involved in. So I found, you know, all these different things, Big Brothers, Boy Scouts, and I kept thinking male mentors, you know. And whereas my daughter was much more isolating and more like, F this, F the world. They took my school away from me. Now my dad's gone, you know. A lot of anger. So I had to, you know, she needed something totally, you know, different.
Right. Anger is such an easier emotion, I think, especially I mean, it's funny. I would say, because a lot of people are just like, oh, women are so emotional. But the truth is that I know a lot of women that mask all of that sadness with anger. Because it's easier. It's easier to control. It's easier to just, you know what I mean? And you need to, like, you know what I mean, like, process and move through it. But anger is an easier emotion to function with, I think, because when you're crying, you are so vulnerable. You're sort of just like, you know, vomiting it all out. When you're angry, you can still do things. I mean, I'm angry every day and I get shit done.
You channel it into comedy, which you do really, really well because you're so quick. Well, you know, so anyway, it was different schools and some therapy. Most therapy's crap, but there was some good. What I would say too, and this I think is true with grief and therapy in general. The therapy that ended up helping me and my daughter was very short term and directed.
Okay.
It wasn't just sit there, oh, tell me how,
Well, like, explain that.
Okay, so for me it was, this was because of, I don't know, maybe I had crap insurance, so they're like, look, you get you get 6 things, and here's what we're going to do.
You can grieve for 6 sessions, and
no, it was really smart. The woman goes, okay, blah blah blah. Your husband's gone, we know that, but what's something you need help? And I said, I need help getting out the door. Like just getting out, other than functioning for my kids, I couldn't. Okay, so what would the goal be like? Well, if I could, even just show up to volunteer somewhere, whatever. And I was so raw at that time, I couldn't even continue showing up for therapy. But then about 6 months later, but it was still, she planted the seed. So I went and started volunteering at Meals on Wheels. And that really helped because I had to show up for somebody. There's people who have more problems than I have. Right. And then it reconnected me with my husband, who was a chef, and I had owned restaurants with him, and I had a Food Network show. And so it also helped, because you're something about, I don't know, grief. I feel like it really hurts your self-esteem.
Yeah, of course.
You get really you
get small.
Yeah, feel small, not feel confident. And so like I'm chopping onions. they're saying, well, wait a minute, you clearly have great culinary, like you should do this whole meal over here. Oh, if you think so, but there was just that humbleness. So that was one. And then with my daughters, it was, I can't remember the name of it, but it wasn't just let's sit broadly talk about. It was, when you feel anxiety, here are some exercises to deal with how that anxiety.
Right.
When you feel scared about going into a social situation, here's a skill set. So it was very specific.
Right. I mean, it's helpful. So everybody grieves so differently. I didn't even. It's funny because that 1 week, and I was talking to my brother so much, and I was talking to my therapist, and I remember thinking, when he dies, it's going to be completely different than when my mom died. Like, my mom affected every aspect of my everyday life. That's how, like, you know what I mean? Like, I talk to her. We have relationships with our parents most of the time longer than we do as adults than we do as children. Mm-hmm. So I had a longer adult relationship with my mother, but, it was like a daily thing. It was, you know what I mean? She was such a part of my everyday. And my brother and I, we had many years where we only spoke on holidays and birthdays. And then when my daughter was born, I definitely made a point of reconnecting with him, video calling, so he could get to know her, she could get to know him. And I'm so glad that I did. So glad that I did that. But it's like, I remember thinking, well, he's going to pass and it's going to be really sad, but it's not going to affect me the same way. And what's crazy is that it's affected me definitely in a different way because I didn't talk to him every single day, but it almost feels not real. Yeah. It's a sibling. I never thought that would happen. I just didn't think I would lose my sibling.
Yeah, because there are companions in life.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And it's like, we also expect, I'm sure you didn't expect your husband to leave. Like, our parents, like my mom left too early, but you're brought up to know that you will. Yes, it's the natural order of things. It will happen. So when my brother, I was like, I just didn't think of that. I just was like, so he took a large chunk of my childhood, even though it wasn't my adult life, you know what I mean? It was my childhood that he took.
Well, I have a brother from another mother it's a long story, but we were raised together, but not biological. And he took his life
I'm sorry.
In 2014. And it effed me up hard, and it affected my marriage, and and that's its own special sauce of
when
grief.
Somebody chooses,
and when and I would say anybody who's had that to definitely seek a survivors of suicide support group, which I did,
right,
and it helped because that's its own special sauce. I was in a widow group, and which was helpful, but there was one woman who said, I'm not sure I'm in the right group because her fiance had taken his life, and the moderator was like, oh yes, you're in the right group because grief is grief. And I was like, so quiet and timid. Of course, it was still on Zoom because of the pandemic. I was like, I'm sorry, I just have to say that's BS, and you should get out of this group, and you should go to as far because it's a whole other level.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that as opposed to just supporting you, that person who all your inside jokes, all the remember and then we do those little plays on the porch.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things. Yes, my childhood came rushing back in a lot of ways I didn't expect. All of the differences we had, all of the fighting that we had growing up was completely gone. But then, what happens is, and here's the thing. It's obviously a privilege to get older. I sit there and fight it with all the Botox and filler I can.
I'm so due.
I fight it so hard. Wait until I get my facelift on camera, guys. But
you don't need it.
I'm getting it. I'm getting it, guys. I'm doing it. You saw
Let's
Kris
get a 2-for-1.
Let's get a 2-for-1.
Yeah, 2-for-1. Tijuana, here we come.
Seriously, they should do a BOGO. But honestly, what was I going to say? About fighting. Oh, yes. Yeah. Aging is a privilege. Aging is a privilege. You want to age. You want to get older. But one of the things that you have to deal with is the loss of loved ones, is losing your friends, is losing your family. It happens to people.
Let me tell you, my mom was 95, 5 months and 10 days when she passed. And that was the problem, is that she was starting to bury, all of her contemporaries.
Yes.
She still had a couple of good friends, but they were, because my mother was very social and traveled a lot, they were much younger than her. And then what really got to her was that one of my cousins passed. So we're driving around, and I could just tell, and I said, Mom, this is about Chuggy was his nickname. You're Chuggy. And she goes, yeah. And then I took to this wine bar, and I sat her down. I said, Mom, we're going to do this. And it was like in an alley. It's a long story, but it was a great little place. Anyway, got her wine, got her some food. And I said, Mom, we're going to bury everybody. And she goes, okay. And I said, this is the only way we are going to survive this. We just have to go. We're going to effing bury everybody. You know? I mean, you have to have the skin of a rhino if you want to really get old.
Yes. And a sense of humor, obviously. Yeah. Because it really helps in the difficult times. And we were talking a little bit about this before, but, so grieving with social media nowadays. I mean, back in the day when there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok, there was nothing, and somebody would pass, people would find out about it just by...
In the paper,
in an announcement to your family and friends. Now, I remember actually thinking, he passed away, and all I wanted to do was get home to my daughter, and my dad stayed to, clean up some stuff, and I came back, and I remember thinking, I am going to post something. I did not post anything about my mom because that was, 2012 for a little while because...
On the concrete tablet.
Yes, I didn't scroll into scribe and send it via carrier pigeon.
Yes.
But I...
Get out the semaphores.
I back then I just was like, I don't think I was ready for that. But this time I really wanted to post something mainly so that everybody knew. And I didn't have to have that conversation. Everyone's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, my brother. I wanted everyone to kind of know, not because I wanted everyone to reach out. And a lot of people did, and it was really beautiful and heartwarming, especially my family that already knew. But I just didn't want to have to tell the story over and over and over again. Agreed. And some people, though, and then so the people look at you when you're grieving on social media, and some people don't agree with what you post or what you say. And then people see you moving on, and then people don't agree with that. And it's not that you're moving on, but you are living. You are living your life. You know what I mean? And then if they see a picture of you not sobbing, they're like, oh, she's over it. You know what I mean? Yes. And it's like, that's not the case. You know what I mean?
No, certainly not. And also grief comes in waves. Yes. So I have some nice friends who've been checking in on me, and I'll say, well, today I was good. Tuesday I was a wreck. Right. But today I'm actually okay. Yeah. And it comes and goes, and there'll be different things that trigger it.
Yeah.
And being with friends is good, being active, having tasks. Yes. Supporting other people.
It really is important to have things to do. And I mean, now your kids were older. I wonder, for me, having a 4-year-old has definitely, she brings that joy. So, I'm grieving. I have this underlying sadness, but also I'm
so much joy.
But I'm so much joy.
No, I know my son was 2 when my father died. So it was, So you just have to live in the moment.
You have to live in the moment.
And that's what he'd want too.
I can't imagine. So I'm wondering, not would it have been easier, it would have been different, but if your kids were younger and Mark had passed, because you were, like I said, dealing with their grief.
Yes.
My daughter,
I think that would have been harder because they would have had less of a memory of him.
Of course, yes.
And in some ways it was good because the pandemic year was so awful and we weren't getting along, and my daughter and my husband were fighting a lot. Whereas when they were little, he was Santa Claus. He was just the funnest guy. And my daughter said, if this had happened a couple of years ago, I wouldn't be able to get off the floor. Where she'd already started to feel a little of that teenage pushback. But what was hard was she said, I thought that I would be able I always thought my dad and I were going to heal our relationship. And I said, you still can, but you're going to have to do it without him, but I will help you. And that was really where cooking, and this comes back to my life on social media now, is for her senior project. She had to do a guiding question. And the guiding question was, will I be a better cook if I cook out of my dad's cookbooks? So she got his last published cookbook. And then she said, will you help me? And I said, yes. And so I was like, the old, can't take the girl away from the camera. I said, let's video this. So we started, really no quality, no light. And we both got a lot out of it. And that's when I was saying, well, maybe I should start doing cooking videos again. But I said, but I don't, when I was with Food Network, I had a producer, I had a stylist, I had all that stuff. And my kids were the ones saying, Mom, nobody cares about production value on YouTube. As long as you're authentic and relatable and just do it. So I did start to do it again. And she did really, it helped. She says it really helped heal her she got into greater appreciation for her dad and his skills. And now she's very, much more proud, like, I'm Mark Peel's daughter. Whereas she said when he first died, she's like, I couldn't even be in my body. Like she just had to kind of separate from it. And just giving her the space to do that, not being like, you have to do it this way or that way. Everybody finds their way.
It's interesting how you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what everybody believes. I believe that I do believe it because I've had so many experiences where my mom has come to visit.
Oh, I'd love that.
I had this, it was during the pandemic and I was living alone and it was just me and my indoor cat and a whole bunch of outdoor cats that knew that I was a single woman over 40 and they were like, take her now. Like, seriously, like honestly.
You get the arm, I'll nibble on the fingers.
The first one showed up and she had a look in her eye after I fed her that was like, there'll be more. And there was, I had so many, but anyway, there was like nothing happening during the pandemic. I was like, there was nobody, everybody was in their own little, I was like, I need a pod. So I remember I was doing a meditation and I remember, especially up until that point, I'm like, I believe in the afterlife more than anyone, and my mom has only come to see me like twice. Like, it pissed me off that my mom, who wanted to be with me all the time, wasn't coming to see me, and I was like, come on, woman.
Cat's in the cradle.
Yeah, seriously, come on. So I was doing a meditation, and I had this amazing vision that was like clear as day, where it was me and her. I was in the adoption process, but it was I was still really waiting, had been over a year at this point. And it was like a vision, and it was me, my mom, and a woman. Not an adult, but not a young child, like a young adult. And it was the three of us when we were in one of those like football huddles and we were spinning around and I just knew this was my daughter. It was very weird, but I just knew it. And so it was the three women, three different generations spinning around together. And I was sobbing, like tears of joy. And I was like, oh my God, it just like hit me. And then, it was 6 months later, my daughter was born.
Wow.
And I like held on to that because it was, and I've had other, moments where she's come to me.
Through her.
But when I was flying out to see my brother, he was, I was talking to him every single day. He knew I was coming out. And then he fell unconscious, like right at my layover. My dad and I were flying out. We got there obviously in time. He hadn't passed, but he wasn't conscious. And it was like, I was heartbroken from that, but I know he heard us. But when I was on the airplane, I was like really stressed out, so I did a meditation, and I was kind of like in and out of sleep.
That's great, you can do that.
It was more like a sleep meditation,
My
but I
brain's
needed
too monkey.
I have like the app, so there's like music in the background, so I know. So I'm laying, on this, well, not laying, sitting on an uncomfortable United flight, and just like just
living
sitting
the
there,
dream with my sack of peanuts.
just sitting there trying not to pee for the 15th time, and I had a vision, and my mom was there. I hadn't seen her in a while, and it was beautiful, and I remember feeling so happy. And we were sitting on a bench, and she looked young.
Oh my God.
Oh,
it's my daughter. Oh, hello. Vivian, I'm on the podcast. Can I call you back?
That was my mom, guys.
Okay, bye.
That is like my mom's favorite song. I'm not even kidding you.
That's
one of my mom's favorite songs.
That's my daughter's ringtone, yeah.
That's hilarious. That was my mom calling.
My daughter was very excited about me doing the podcast, and she's in Italy right now.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
We have to keep that in. Okay, so I'm on the bench. My mom's there. She looks great. and I was very happy, like full body happiness.
Full body.
And I got up and I started walking, you know what I mean? Just quickly, because I'm always in a rush. And I get up and I start walking and I turn around and my mom was still sitting on the bench. And it was beautiful, but it was very obvious because there was the seat right next to her that she was waiting for my brother. I mean, it was so clear.
Wow.
And she was smiling though. She wasn't like, she just was smiling, and it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And also really sad. I wasn't flying out to see my brother thinking he was going to miraculously survive. I knew he was passing, but seeing that made me feel a lot better. And then I told him when he was like in the hospice place for 2 hours, he was there, that was it. And I told him, I saw Mom.
Yeah.
And you can go. And she's waiting for you.
Yeah.
And 15 minutes later, he was gone.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a sense of comfort. It's a weird thing that, not that I plan on going anywhere for a very long period of time, but there is less fear in dying now, knowing they're there, waiting, you know, for however long it takes. You know what I mean?
I was such a sucker when Pope Francis died. Did you see on TikTok there were those AI generated ones of Pope Francis? Of course, it was AI generated, and Jesus greeting Francis, and I found myself transfixed.
It was found footage, actually, guys.
It was found footage. Yeah, but I think I made a comment like, I know this is goofy as heck, but I find it so comforting.
There is.
You know, because that's what I want it to be. I want Jesus is waiting there with the open arms. Like, there it is.
I feel like so many people
And then I
want
started
that.
critiquing. I was like, wait a minute. Jesus would not be in such an opulent place. That looks like Trump's idea of heaven. You know, like it would be more bare bones if it was
totally bare bones.
It was Jesus.
But I mean, I think a lot of people, that's what we want. You know, we hold on to that belief, and it's comforting. And
well, because it's so funny, you're like, how does that energy go nowhere? And then my friend said you should read Jeremy Renner's new book, because he talks about when he died. He came back, of course, but that he said it was great.
Yeah.
He was a great
I mean,
feeling,
I definitely am all about the near-death experiences and stuff. Did you have, when Mark passed, has he come to you? Did he come to you? Did you get any signs?
I've had the dreams where it's super, super vivid. And about 4 days ago, I had this, because of course I'm always thinking of him, but I just saw him and his mother, my mother-in-law, who passed 2 years before him, so clearly. I mean, where I could see the pores of their skin, you know, like they were just, they were just right there. And I was texting with my sister-in-law, and she said they're comforting you. They're telling you your mom's okay, that they're going to be there for her. And I know that that's true.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I don't know if this is a thing too. Some people say they do see animals, but I wanted to ask you because so when my mom died, she died in Reno, guys. Don't be jealous. Don't be jealous, guys.
I hope it was at a craps table.
Listen to me. It was like where she was staying in that part of the hospital was like an industrial park. It was just, you know, it's Reno. It's just like all concrete. It wasn't like lush. There wasn't trees anywhere. It was like a parking lot. She basically died in a parking lot. But so she passed, and you know, I was with her. And you feel very small. It doesn't matter how old you are. I felt like a toddler again. I felt exactly like my daughter, wanting my mommy to stay.
Yep, of course.
And I felt very young again when my brother was dying too. But I was with my mom, and then I didn't know what to do afterwards. It's the first time I lost someone. Now I knew what to do when my brother passed. But I was like, I knew somebody was coming to get her. But it was just in the room with my mom's body, which is no longer my mom. And the nurse came in, she's like, honey, you can leave. And I was like, oh, okay. I was so out of it. And I know I was meeting her one friend.
Were you by yourself?
No, her one friend was there, a very good friend. And they had gone ahead. I was meeting up with her and her husband at a restaurant. I felt I had to be there to wrap up stuff. I didn't know what I had to do. Anyway, so the nurse was like, you can go. The funeral home is going to come or the crematorium. Yeah. So I was packing up everything. Remember.
Party's moving on.
We're going to a bar now. And I did get very drunk that night. And then I called Southwest drunk. And I was like, I need to get out of Reno. My mom is dead. And they were like, let's change that flight. I'm not even kidding you. They were like, let's get you out of there. I was like, thank you. It's the funny things you say that everybody thinks you're just crying all the time. But actually, there's a lot of humor.
Well, there's also a lot of death housekeeping that takes. There's a huge. And I still have a bit of affection for AT&T when I was sobbing my head off because his phone was stolen in the hospital that I just bought, and I was like, I just bought this phone.
Someone stole your husband's phone?
Yeah. Anyway, and so they said we're gonna waive it because it was gonna be like $1,000 or something. But yeah, so I'm always remembering like who was nicest as I sopped my head off, closing down all the accounts,
absolutely,
and so forth. Yeah.
So this nurse came in. She was like, "You can leave." So I was like picking up my stuff, and I look out the window in this parking lot, and there was a white bunny, and I say bunny because it didn't look like a rabbit, one of those like rabbits that or whatever, and it was the tiniest little white bunny in a parking lot, basically. Like it's not like there was like a forest around or woods, and it was staring at me. It was just staring at me through the window, and I was frozen looking at it. And of course, I was like, "Mom," and then it just hopped away. And I was like, "What the fuck was that?"
Well, it's funny because a friend of mine said, "Oh, when I think of Mark, I think of butterflies, and when you see a butterfly, it's him." But I remember, and I'm thinking, that doesn't seem like Mark at all to me.
I think people always go to butterflies. Go to butterflies. You're like, he wasn't really a butterfly type of guy. No. What do you think he was?
I think he'd be, if anything, he'd be more like my big black lab. Somebody more, in terms of a spirit animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Well, my mom, I don't think she ever was like, she's a koala bear to me, but that bunny, I don't even know what that bunny. Anyway, the bunny hopped away. I was like in a fog. Cut to. My brother passes away. My dad and I go out to a restaurant.
And he orders rabbit, which was so awkward.
So weird, and we ate it together.
Yeah.
No, so he, we're, toasting to my brother, but also like staring at our food. My dad, 81, and we leave. Now, North Carolina, it is definitely, more lush, but we were in a strip mall. It was a restaurant in a strip mall, and there was a tiny little field with a tiny little pond, whatever. But this was like nighttime. And we came out of the restaurant and we're walking to the car, and right across the pond, staring at me the same way the fucking rabbit was a goose. A fucking goose.
You got a children's book.
I
got a children's book here.
But I'm like, I go, "Dad, look at that." And my dad's like, "What?" I go, "What the fuck is that?" Like, it was so odd. And it just kind of made me laugh. I was like, so my mom's a rabbit, my brother's a goose. What is happening here? So of course, I Google it all, and they all mean different things. But so you never saw anything like that?
I think I put meaning on it, but I didn't really feel not.
Did either one of your kids ever did he ever come to them or?
No, only dreams. We visited in dreams.
Right.
But we've all had that. Yeah. But I mean, I've had really, really clear where he's hanging out and we're having a good time. And then all of a sudden in the dream, I go, "Oh, wait a minute, you're gone." And he's like, "Yep, I am." Oh, but I think of it like a visit. Like I like that visit.
See, it's so weird. I used to get angry because my mom wouldn't come to me in dreams. I would have dreams where she was there, but it wasn't like I knew she was dead. It was just a dream of us just like shopping at Target.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Mom, what are we doing?" But it wasn't, I didn't know in my dream it wasn't like that. There were only like 2 times that she actually came to me that I knew she was dead, and I was trying to like talk to her, like, "Are you okay?" Like that kind of. She did come to me though while I was like half asleep, and I felt her like touching I felt someone touching I knew that it was her. It was like deep in the grief.
Well, I think it's the hardest part of all of this is I'm never going to see him again.
Yes, that's the hardest part.
And I remember, so the first big death for me was my father, which was in 2010, and thinking if it could just be like one of those Facebook friends we have, like, "Oh, I worked with them 20 years ago at a radio station in San Francisco, and I don't really see them much, but every once in a while they post about a trip to Mexico, and I go, 'Oh, Greg's in Mexico, that's nice.'" Just a little nugget, just something. Like my mother was a very real intellectual and traveled the world, listened to opera. I thought if I could just get a little text from her saying, hanging out with Bertolt Brecht. I knew Lillian Hellman didn't really write her books, something.
You know what?
So she's okay.
In the future, because they are doing this already, AI generated. Well, they have these tombstones, these interactive tombstones. I know this because I work on a trivia show, that soon they'll be able to recreate your loved one's voice based on videos and voicemail, and they will be able to, if they have interactive tombstones, they'll be able to interact with you, at a tombstone. They'll tell people about themselves, but they will be able to, in the future, you'll be able to.
I wish before they go that you could get, what is it? A USB lightning? What do you call that? When you
the USB cord? Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a USB.
If I could have plugged that into Mark because he was James Beard award-winning chef. Even just be like, can you just give me, all the stuff about cooking, because I learned, he was a big history buff, like, just some history of my mom, if I could, but growing up in LA in the 30s, just like some stuff.
I was going to say, and in the future, you will. You'll be able to do it all. And honestly, I think it's so wonderful that you and your daughter, especially your daughter, are using Mark's books to cook. That's a great show too. Should totally do that.
Yeah, that was kind of how I started the YouTube. So my TV show was called Daphne Dishes, and then this one I called Daphne Dishes Again. See where I went with that one?
See what you did?
It's crazy. It's crazy, yeah. Although I haven't posted in a couple weeks, but I usually am pretty good about posting. But yes, and to what you said earlier about Cool Mom, I own all that IP. I own the site because when my partners and I amicably parted, and it's been sitting there, and I'm like, I need to do something.
You're still Cool Mom. You are still Cool Mom.
It's a good name.
All right, before we wrap up though, I do want to ask you, because I feel like I just saw a post now. Are you dating?
I'm engaged.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know you guys were engaged. I knew you were dating. Oh my God, yay!
And that also was hard to oh God, how do I tell the world now after I just was sobbing all over my social media?
You know what though? When I saw, I think it was either your birthday or his birthday. I think it was your birthday, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Once again, I was so happy for you.
Thank you.
And also I've never been engaged once, okay, guys? Whatever. No, but I was I was so happy for you, for your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truly a godsend. It was the first date I went on. I mean, I am not the one.
Well, now I'm just pissed.
Now
okay?
I am not the one to do dating is so terrible in your 50s. I'm like, well, or not. Yeah.
Or not, she's engaged.
Yeah. So got really, really, really lucky. It was 2 years. A friend of mine had gone on Bumble. She had found somebody really nice. And I was like, well, I don't know. My daughter was encouraging me. Mom, it's time. And she kind of told me how to do it. She goes, you got to pay. You got to pay so you see who likes you, because then some people just, they die on that app. You don't know if they're really there. And don't pick anybody on a step and repeat. Don't pick anybody who's in a car. Don't pick anybody who has holding a beer. Like she had all the, okay. And so I spoke to a few people, and he came up right away, and it said restaurant manager. And again, my husband was a chef, and I went, oh, no more restaurants. They work all the time. No, thank you. And finally I was like, oh, to heck with it. And and because he's not a neurotic American and he's Italian, reached out right away. And he said, you want to have lunch on Monday? And I really couldn't. I didn't have any time, but I thought, okay, I see how this works. It's like you got to just hit while the iron's hot and go. And so I met him at Farmer's Market, and then when I saw him, I was like, holy crud, because he's cuter in person. And divorced, no kids. And so but I was just thinking, hey, this is great. I get to have sex and go out to dinner once a week now. And I was fine with that for a few months, and then it, kept evolving. And one of the things that really got me was as I was taking more care of my mom, he was like, I'll help you take care of your mom. You're not alone on this. And I was like, sheets of tears, and I'm like, well, let's talk to the kids about you moving in, and they were both like, why isn't he already here?
Right.
So yeah.
Oh my God.
So that was a total godsend. I mean, I still can't even believe it.
It was a Mark
still can't even believe
it. It was a godsend and a
Well, I've had friends who have said that. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I totally believe that. So, Mark, if you're listening, can you send someone for me?
Yes.
I'm just saying, I also just lost a loved one, so whatever. My mom is up there. I'm sure she's talking your ear off.
Well, I was going to say, sorry.
Oh, no, good.
I was just going to say, my tip for middle-aged dating is don't think about the other person. Think about you.
Yes.
Because I dated so differently than when I was in my 20s. In my 20s, I would have been like, ew, what's your job? That's your apartment?
Right.
That's your car? Whereas this time I was like, you can be whoever you want. All I want to be is a person with integrity and have a nice time, and you're you and I'm me. And I think that's a better mindset.
I agree. Tell everyone where they can find you, and we'll have it listed too. But
okay, so I'm on TikTok at Daphne Brogdon. It's a biggie, and that's where I do my lives, and Instagram too, but Instagram is terrible for conversion. Anyway, YouTube is Cool Mom, spelled out, coolmom.com, and Daphne Dishes again.
Oh my God. I'm so glad. Thank you for coming on here.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, of course.
I love it here. I'm so impressed. Look at this.
I know we're just going to live here. I live here now. Guys, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, and new episodes come out every Monday. I'm Jodi Miller, and don't call me ma'am. Thanks for tuning in to Don't Call Me Ma'am. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you never miss an episode. See you next time.